Hi and welcome to this guide to the UK Skilled Worker Visa. In this video, I'm going to take you through the key details employers need to know about the skilled worker route and how it works in practice from the employer's perspective. My name's Jill and I'll be explaining the general rules and framework you'll need to understand to be able to hire a worker under this visa route. Now, quick disclaimer, this video is for general informational purposes only to explain the rules. If you do have a question or need professional help, then get in touch with us at Davidson Morris. We're an SRA regulated law firm and we offer fixed fee telephone consultations without commitment. Just call our welcome team and they can book you in to speak to one of our qualified advisors and you can get your specific questions answered quickly. You can find details of how to book a fixed fee telephone consultation in the caption below. Okay, so if you're a UK organisation and you're looking to hire someone from overseas, in most cases you'd need to sponsor them for a skilled worker visa. Now, in reality, this process is not as simple as finding a candidate and then going on to fill out a Home Office form. Before you can even look at the visa application form, the employer first has to get their sponsorship status in order. Now that means applying for a sponsor licence if you don't already have one. Now, as well as this, the job applicant will also have to meet the strict visa criteria and they'll have to be able to prove this in their application. Any problems or issues with the visa application are going to delay the Home Office processing and could even mean a refusal. Now, this is obviously going to impact your recruitment and onboarding. And if you've already found the right person, you don't want to lose out on your candidate. And you don't want to waste time and application fees if you've not prepared properly. So while it is the worker who actually applies for the visa, you'll want to make sure that you as the employer and the job applicant, that you work together to get the visa process right. So in this video, we're going to cover the key details to help you approach the skilled worker process with confidence. We're going to look at who can apply. We'll look at the requirements on the employer and the requirements on the worker. And we'll also look at the application process. We'll also touch on extensions in ILR because one of the key benefits of the skilled worker visa is that it can be extended and it can put the worker on the path to UK indefinite leave to remain. Now remember, we are looking at the general rules and position in law, and if you want to understand what this all means for your company or for your own visa application, then book onto a telephone consultation with us. The details are below. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, the UK actually offers a broad range of work visas, and these cater for specific niches and skills and sectors. But the skilled worker is the main general work visa route. It means that employers can recruit foreign nationals for work in the UK, but only in specific types of jobs and where the specific eligibility criteria are met. Also, and this is really important, it's a sponsored work route. So before the worker can apply for the actual visa, they'll need a job offer from an employer with a valid sponsor licence who can assign the worker a certificate of sponsorship. Now, if you're an employer and you're unsure about the sponsor licence application process, then you can check out our other videos covering applications and sponsorship advice. And our website as well is full of content explaining what's involved because, as you'd probably expect, it's not a straightforward tick box exercise. But it is mandatory. The employer must have that sponsor licence before they can hire under the skilled worker route. Now, on the basis that the employer does have a valid sponsor licence, let's get into the skilled worker visa itself. So, the UK skilled worker visa gives foreign nationals permission to work in the UK for an approved sponsor. The applicant needs to have a job offer from their sponsor in an eligible skilled occupation. They also have to meet other criteria like minimum salary, English language requirements, and financial maintenance. Now, the visa can be issued for up to 5 years with the option to extend if the worker is still eligible. Now, some skilled workers, but not all, are allowed to bring their immediate family members with them if they qualify as dependents. Now, the rules here have become more restrictive, So we'll cover that area in more detail later. After 5 years under the skilled worker visa, the worker and their dependent family may be able to apply for an indefinite leave to remain. That means they can live in the UK on a permanent basis without needing to apply for a visa again. ILR is sometimes referred to as settlement, and it's hugely appealing for workers who are looking for that longer term certainty and security and who want to make the UK their home. But also for employers, ILR for their sponsored workers really helps to support longer term workforce planning and stability. So the skilled worker is an attractive and popular route, but changes in 2025 were brought in that have effectively restricted the availability of the visa to only the highest skilled and the highest paid workers. In 2025, we saw the biggest overhaul of the skilled worker visa since it opened. 2 headlines. First, skill level. Since 22nd of July 2025, new sponsorships are mostly limited to degree level roles or higher. Now, these are referred to as RQF 6+ jobs. RQF is the framework used for skill levels. Now, RQF 6+ is degree level or higher, which was an uplift from the previous threshold of RQF 3, which was A-level equivalent. So this effectively removed most supervisor and technician roles from first-time skilled worker eligibility, unless specific and limited transitional provisions applied. Now, the second area of change was pay. The standard general worker minimum threshold was moved up to £41,700, and the going rate tables for eligible roles were also increased to match the latest data. Now, only guaranteed basic PAYE counts, so overtime and allowances can't be relied on. 2 lists are also now in effect for sponsorship: the immigration salary list and the new temporary shortage list. Now, these lists will need to be checked against before making a skilled work application because they can offer alternative lower thresholds. Now, the Home Office has said that these lists can be changed at any time and roles can be added or removed at its discretion. But both lists are due to end by the 31st of December 2026. Other transitional options were also brought in at the same time for people already in the skilled worker route and for specific health and education roles. So-called continuing employment concessions let some people who were already here in RQF 3 to 5 codes, they can keep extending or changing jobs within the same code. But for most of these codes, the end date is the 4th of April 2030, while for care worker codes, it's the 22nd of July 2028. Also, new overseas recruitment into care worker codes is now closed, with limited in-country switching until July 2028. Dependents are also now tied more closely to role level. RQF 6+ roles can usually bring family, but new dependents for RQF 3-5 are now blocked, unless very narrow transitional exceptions apply. Some proposals are still under review, like higher English language requirements, but these are not enforced yet, but that could be changed. Now, we'll go through each of these within the individual visa requirements, but it's important to make sure that you only work to the current rules and not old versions or previous thresholds. So if you're unsure about eligibility, get in touch, get some advice so you can be confident before you invest in the sponsored visa process. Now, as an employer, your organisation needs to have a valid sponsor licence before you can hire under the skilled worker route. This is the permission you need to hire workers under sponsored categories like the skilled worker. If your organisation doesn't already have a sponsor licence, you need to apply for one from the Home Office. Now, the application process is quite demanding and it can take around 8 weeks to process. This doesn't include preparation time. You'll need to fill out the application form with your information about the organisation. You'll also need to compile quite extensive supporting documents to prove you meet the eligibility criteria. So that means you need to show that the organisation is genuine and operating lawfully in the UK and is capable of meeting quite onerous sponsorship duties. That means having adequate HR systems and practices in place and also suitable key personnel. So as I say, this process can take around 8 weeks for a decision, and you'll need to make sure that your recruitment planning and timeframes account for this stage if you need to secure a licence. With a sponsor license in place, you can then move on to assign a certificate of sponsorship to the individual you want to make the job offer to. Now, the certificate of sponsorship is a unique reference number that the visa applicant needs to be able to make their application to the Home Office. It's important because it's effectively the employer saying to the Home Office that the job and the worker meet the skilled worker visa requirements. It's like a form of self-certification. The worker cannot make their visa application without a valid certificate of sponsorship from their sponsor. Right, let's move on to the actual worker eligibility criteria for the skilled worker route. Now, before I start, just to remind you that while I can explain the rules, they are complex. And if you need help and advice in your specific circumstances, get in touch with us. Details are in the caption below. Now, the skilled worker visa application process is designed for the Home Office to verify eligibility. So you'll need to make sure that the candidate qualifies before proceeding with the job offer and visa application. The full requirements are set out in Appendix Skilled Worker under the UK's points-based immigration rules. But basically, the applicant needs to accrue 70 points across the different criteria. The 70 points will be made up of 50 points for mandatory criteria. These are having a suitable job offer and sponsorship by a licensed employer, demonstrating English language to the required standard, and meeting the skill level for the job. 20 points are then available for what are classed as tradable criteria, like salary level. In terms of salary, the job has to pay at least the relevant minimum skilled worker visa salary threshold for the role, or the going rate for that role, whichever is higher. Now, there's different thresholds for different roles and for different types of workers and different levels of experience. Now, currently, the general threshold for most roles is £41,700, or the going rate for the specific role, whichever is the higher. Going rates are stipulated by the government for each eligible role. Now, in some cases, a lower threshold may be available. For example, if the applicant is a new entrant, or if someone has a relevant PhD, they could qualify for a reduced salary threshold. There's also the immigration salary list to consider. Now, this replaced the shortage occupation list, and the jobs on this list are generally subject to lower salary rates than the general threshold. Now, it doesn't help that the government changes the threshold and the jobs on the list quite frequently, so you need to check the correct thresholds when the application is being made to avoid any issues. Employers also have to make sure that they are calculating the salary correctly, because there are specific rules on working week hours, overtime. And if UKVI calculates that the stated salary is incorrect and is in fact below the required threshold, the application is going to be refused. Now, you want to avoid this and get the application calculation right and apply the correct relevant threshold. Now, the skilled worker salary rules are probably the most complex aspect of the visa application, so you may want to take professional advice to check that you are working to the correct threshold, and also to see if a lower threshold applies and is available. Now, in terms of skill level, the rules on skill level were tightened in 2025. The skilled worker route's predecessor, the Tier 2 general visa, was always a highly skilled visa route, and it was only open to roles demanding at least degree level skill. The skilled worker visa initially allowed medium skilled roles, RQF levels 3 to 5, which is equivalent to A-level standard. But in July 2025, the skill level was effectively reinstated back up to RQF 6 or above, equivalent to a degree level. Jobs below this level now won't usually qualify under the skilled worker visa requirements. However, transitional rules were put in place when the skill level was increased, and these allow some medium skill roles to remain eligible, but only on a temporary basis. The temporary shortage list sets out which medium skilled roles are eligible for the time being at least. So you need to check this list on the Home Office website when making an application, because it is subject to change and you can only rely on the list as it stands on the date of the application. Okay, so how do you know what skill level a job is? Well, skill levels are set by the Home Office using Standard Occupational Codes, or SOC codes, SOC. To find out if a job qualifies, you'll need to find the right SOC code for the job you're recruiting for. You can do this using the ONS occupation coding tool. You can use it to find the job description that most closely matches the role you're recruiting for. Use the description rather than the job title. Now, once you have the relevant SOC code, cross-check it against the list of eligible jobs for the skilled worker visa in Appendix Skilled Occupations. Now, one important thing to note here is that issues with SOC codes often result in refused applications. You can't try to shoehorn or squeeze a job into a SOC code just to make it fit or to make it eligible. Look at the job description and try to match those to the job being recruited for. Don't rely on job title alone, focus on the description. If the Home Office has concerns about SOC code selection and matching, like if it's not convinced the actual job fits the code you've provided, they can come back to the employer to ask for further evidence to prove suitability. Again, this is an area the Home Office is hot on, so if you're unsure, get advice. The next requirement is English language proficiency. The applicant will need to show they meet a minimum standard of knowledge of English. Now, the standard required for the skilled worker visa is a minimum level B1 on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages scale. That's for reading, writing, speaking, and understanding English. Now, most applicants will prove this by taking an approved test, or if they have a qualification that was taught in English. Applicants from English-speaking countries like the US and New Zealand won't need to prove this requirement. Now, the final requirement for skilled worker relates to financial maintenance. Applicants will have to show they have at least £1,270 in savings, and this has to have been in the applicant's bank account for at least 28 days before the date of the application. However, employers can choose to cover this cost on the applicant's behalf. They can do this by adding the details to the worker's certificate of sponsorship. Now, with the requirements met, the next stage is the visa application itself. Workers can apply for a skilled worker visa either from overseas, and this is known as entry clearance, or they can apply from within the UK, which is called switching, because they'll effectively be switching from one visa category, like the student or graduate visa, to this skilled worker route. Now, the application form is online on the .gov website, and it's relatively straightforward to complete, but the most demanding part for most applications is going to be gathering the supporting evidence. Each of the eligibility criteria will need evidence and proof to confirm eligibility. Applicants are also required to verify their identity either using the UK Immigration ID Check app or by submitting their biometric information at a visa centre. They'll be told which option to use when they apply. The applicant also has to pay the Home Office fee before processing can begin. Now, the fee level depends on a few factors like where the applicant is applying from, how long their certificate of sponsorship has been issued for, and if the role is a health and care sector role. At the moment, these fees range from £304 for a health and care role for under 3 years to £1,519 for a skilled worker certificate of sponsorship of more than 3 years. Now, the same costs apply to any dependents applying with the main visa applicant. And as well as the application fee, applicants also have to pay, in most cases, the immigration health surcharge. And this applies for each year they're in the UK. Currently, this is £1,035 per applicant per year of leave, and a reduced rate of £776 is available for children and students. Skilled worker visa applications generally take up to 8 weeks to process if applying from within the UK, or up to 3 weeks if the application is made from outside the UK. Fast-track processing is sometimes available with the Home Office's priority services. This means the application will be processed by the next working day for an additional £1,000 or within 5 working days for an additional £500. However, these aren't always available, so applicants can't rely on faster processing when making plans. If priority services are available, the applicant will be given the option to purchase either service when they're making the application. Now, something else to caveat here is that priority processing does not guarantee that the visa will be granted. Faster processing can also be delayed if there are problems with the application itself. priority services only pledge faster processing on the proviso that the application is complete and able to be processed without further inquiry. So that's another reason to double check and make sure the application is as strong as it can be before it goes into the Home Office for processing. Now, if the visa is approved, the skilled worker will be subject to visa conditions while they are in the UK and while they remain sponsored and tied to their sponsor and sponsored role. This means they have to remain employed by the organisation in their sponsored role for their visa to remain valid. Specific rules apply if a skilled worker visa wants to change jobs or employer, and also for second jobs. Now, to change jobs or sponsor, in most cases, they'll need a new certificate of sponsorship and may also need to apply for a new visa. If a skilled worker visa holder loses their job, the employer has to notify the Home Office, and in most cases, the worker will be advised that their visa has been curtailed. Now, this usually means they'll be given 60 days to secure new status, usually by finding a new job and a new sponsor and applying for a new visa, which could be a skilled worker visa or a different category like a family visa, depending on the circumstances. Failing that, they'll have to leave the UK before this time period is up, or they risk becoming an overstayer. Now, as the sponsor of a skilled worker visa holder, remember your organisation also has to continue to meet its compliance obligations. So this means checking their right to work, it means keeping accurate records of the worker's details and reporting certain changes to the Home Office. It also means making sure the job role continues to meet the requirements of the skilled worker visa, like salary thresholds. Now, if the Home Office investigates the sponsor, which is happening more and more frequently, and the organisation is found to have breached any of its sponsorship obligations, then the organisation could face penalties. Now, these can include substantial civil penalty fines for right to work failings. There could be a sponsor licence downgrade, suspension, or even revocation in severe cases. This risks your permission to hire from overseas, as well as your sponsored workers' visas. Now, the best approach is to stay compliant and actively manage your licence. Now, if you need help in this area, get in touch with us and ask to speak with one of our immigration compliance specialists. Let's move on to dependent. People relocating to the UK in the medium to long term often want to bring their loved ones with them. The skilled worker visa does allow some visa holders to be accompanied by immediate family members if they qualify for a skilled worker dependent visa. The dependent visa usually runs in step with the main visa, so that means if the principal visa ends, the dependent permission is affected too. Now, who qualifies as immediate family? Well, a partner, it can be a spouse, a civil partner, or an unmarried partner if you've lived together for at least 2 years. Children under 18 qualify, though if a child is 16 or 17, they need to show they live with the family and are financially supported by the parent and are not married or living an independent life unless away in full-time education. Now, if the family is applying from overseas or they haven't lived lawfully in the UK for 12 months, proof of maintenance funds will be needed unless the sponsor has certified maintenance. The standard figures are £285 for a partner, £315 for the first child and £200 for each additional child. Those funds need to sit in the account for 28 days, with day 28 within 31 days before you submit. Each applicant also has to pay the immigration health surcharge for access to the NHS. Dependents are allowed to work in the UK and they can also study while here. Now, the biggest mistake is assuming that every skilled worker visa holder can sponsor family. Not every skilled worker visa is allowed to have dependents join them. The main rule is that dependents are allowed only where the job is graduate level RQF6 or above, but that remains subject to the standard relationship and maintenance rules. For medium skilled roles, RQF 3 to 5 on the immigration salary list or the temporary shortage list, new dependents are not allowed as part of new sponsorships. There is very narrow transitional cover, and this is only if the main worker first held skilled work permission before the 22nd of July 2025, and even then you can't add new dependents where the job itself is on the immigration salary list or temporary shortage list. Care roles are even more restricted. Care workers and senior care workers with visas already granted on or after the 11th of March 2024 cannot bring dependents with them. Only limited exceptions apply, for example, a child born in the UK or unusual responsibility cases. Now, if any of this sounds close to your circumstances, take advice so you can make sure you're planning in the best way for your family. We've already said that one of the most attractive features of the skilled worker visa is that it can be extended. Not all UK work visas allow that. A skilled worker visa extension keeps the worker with the same sponsor in the same role or a role that fits the same occupation code and skill level. Importantly, the worker will still need to show in their application that they still meet the visa requirements. That means meeting the relevant salary threshold. These rules are complicated further for extensions because there are some transitional levels in place, so be aware and work to the correct level for your extension. Skill level is also going to be examined. New hires since July 2025 are generally at gradual level, but people sponsored before this and some sub-degree codes can keep extending under the continuing employment rules until the published end dates. Again, take advice if you're unsure. The SOC code also has to still be relevant against the real duties of the job. English isn't retested for an extension, and maintenance funds aren't usually required if you've been in the UK lawfully for at least 12 months. The employer also needs to assign a new certificate of sponsorship, and then the worker can apply for their extension. Looking longer term, skilled worker visa holders can become eligible for indefinite leave to remain after 5 years in the UK. ILR is basically permanent residence, and it removes time limits and gives you the stability to live and work in the UK without ongoing visa renewals. This position is probably going to change in the future. The government is looking to increase the ILR qualifying period to 10 years from 5, but it's not yet clear if and how this would apply to skilled workers. So for the time being, the qualifying period is 5 years. Now, residence is just one of the ILR requirements. Applicants can't have been outside the UK for more than 180 days in any rolling 12-month period during those 5 years, unless a listed exception applies. ILR also has its own salary rules, and the applicant will have to be paid the higher of either the general salary threshold and the full going rate for their occupation. There is no new entrant or PhD discounts available for ILR. The sponsor also needs to confirm continued employment, and the pay will be at or above the required levels. So applying for ILR will mean planning early to avoid getting caught out by excessive UK absences or if the salary level doesn't meet the relevant specific ILR threshold. So in all, the skilled worker visa offers UK employers a valuable route to recruit from overseas. It's a matter of understanding the visa requirements, both on the employer and the worker, to avoid unwanted processing delays or issues or a refused application. Now, because this is such a complex area, professional advice can really help employers sponsoring a skilled worker, particularly if there are challenging circumstances like time pressure or the need to apply for a sponsor license as well as the visa. So if you're looking for expert support, speak to us. Our specialists will be able to answer your queries and guide you through the sponsorship and visa application process. So thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out our website for more information and help on UK visas and immigration.